Today, a former Nazi went on trial charged with 300,000 counts of accessory to murder.
History remembers Adolf Hitler as the man who dragged the world into its darkest chapter. But behind the propaganda and power, who was he when no one was watching? One man knew the answer: Herbert Döhring, Hitler's personal housekeeper at the Berghof. He was there for the private meals, the late-night meetings, and the quiet moments no one else saw. For decades, Döhring said nothing. But now his long-buried testimony has surfaced, and with it, a portrait of Hitler that's even more disturbing than we imagined. What secrets did the Berghof truly hold? Herbert Döhring wasn't a soldier or a politician. He wasn't even a part of Hitler's inner circle. He was simply just the man who kept Hitler's household running. From 1935 to 1943, Döhring managed the Berghof, Hitler's mountain retreat in the Bavarian Alps. While the world saw a calculated dictator, Döhring saw the man behind the myth. Döhring's path to the Berghof began unexpectedly. While serving as a trained hotel manager, he was recruited through Nazi party connections for his administrative skills. There, he met his wife, Anna, who was already serving as Hitler's cook. Together, they formed an unlikely domestic team at the heart of Hitler's private world. Their professional backgrounds made them perfect candidates to maintain Adolf Hitler's strict household standards without the political baggage of party officials. The couple's arrival at the Berghof marked the beginning of their strange double life. Officially, they were just staff members. In reality, they became two of the few people who saw Hitler unguarded. They both witnessed his private moments that contradicted his public persona. Their unique position gave them access to scenes that would have shocked the German public. For years after the war, Döhring refused to speak. When historians tracked him down, he gave only vague answers. Now, his full testimony has emerged, and it makes us reconsider everything we thought we knew about life inside Hitler's inner sanctum. What finally made him break his silence? What secrets was he still protecting? And why does his account matter now more than ever? The full truth may be even darker than we imagined. But there's just one way to find out: the shocking revelation. The most explosive claim from Döhring's later testimony involved Hitler's niece, Geli Raubal. According to Döhring, his wife Anna had entered a room unexpectedly in 1931 and discovered Hitler and Geli in what could only be described as an intimate embrace on a couch. This wasn't the chaste greeting of a doting uncle to his niece, but something far more troubling. Anna, a practical woman not given to exaggeration, described the scene to her husband in terms that left no doubt about its inappropriate nature. This moment became one of many that made the Döhrings increasingly uncomfortable about the relationship between Hitler and his young niece. What made the situation particularly disturbing was the power imbalance. Hitler was then 42 years old, while Geli was just 23. The caretaker and his wife weren't the only ones who noticed the unusual dynamic. Other household staff whispered about it, and members of Hitler's inner circle later admitted they found the relationship troubling. But you might be wondering, who in fact is Geli Raubal, and how did she become a part of Hitler's story? The story of Geli Raubal's entry into Hitler's life begins in 1925, when Hitler's half-sister Angela Raubal came to work as his housekeeper at Haus Wachenfeld, the one that was transformed to the Berghof estate after the death of her husband. Angela brought her two daughters with her, and the younger one, Geli, immediately stood out. At 17 years old, she possessed a vivacious personality and striking looks that drew attention wherever she went. Initially, Hitler played the role of generous uncle, taking Geli to cultural events and showing her off at social gatherings. But as time passed, his behavior became increasingly possessive. He began monitoring her friendships, restricting her movements, and displaying irrational jealousy when she showed interest in men her own age. In December 1927, upon learning of her affair with his chauffeur, Emile Maury, He compelled her to end the relationship and promptly dismissed Maurice from his service. By 1929, Geli had effectively become a prisoner in Hitler's Munich apartment. Her dreams of studying medicine or pursuing a singing career systematically crushed under Hitler's controlling behavior. Friends who managed to spend time with Geli during this period reported that she seemed increasingly distressed. In one particularly telling moment, she allegedly told a friend, "My uncle is a monster. You have no idea what he makes me do." The exact nature of what she meant remains unclear, but the despair in her words was unmistakable. The situation reached its breaking point in September 1931. Witnesses reported hearing a particularly intense argument between Hitler and Geli on September 18th. The subject of their fight was Geli's desire to travel to Vienna, possibly to study music, or simply to escape Hitler's suffocating control. Hitler's final words before storming out were reportedly, "For the last time, no." What happened next remains one of the most controversial episodes in Hitler's personal history. Hours after the argument, Geli was found dead in Hitler's apartment with a gunshot wound to the chest. The official explanation was self-extermination, but numerous inconsistencies cast doubt on this version of events. The physical evidence didn't support the official narrative. The angle of the bullet wound made it unlikely to have been self-inflicted. The initial police investigation was suspiciously rushed, with key pieces of evidence disappearing almost immediately. Most tellingly, Heinrich Müller, the police officer who would later become head of the Gestapo, was seen pocketing what appeared to be a note from Geli, along with the weapon. Hitler's reaction to Geli's death was equally telling. He fell into a state of profound grief that bordered on collapse. This made some biographers to suggest this was the reaction of a man who had lost someone he loved in the most intense, if not disturbing, way. Yet, at the same time, he moved quickly to suppress any investigation and disappeared from public view until the scandal had blown over. Geli's death left lasting scars on Hitler's psyche. He turned her room into a shrine and reportedly kept a portrait of her with him until his final days in the Berlin bunker. Some historians argue that her death marked a turning point in Hitler's personality, after which he became even more ruthless and detached from normal human relationships. The Döring's testimony only confirmed what many historians had long suspected. Hitler's relationship with his niece crossed boundaries that were inappropriate at best, abusive at worst. The story of Hitler and Geli Raubal remains one of the darkest and least understood chapters in the biography of one of history's greatest dictators. The full truth about what happened between Hitler and his niece may never be known. But it was clear that Hitler had strong feelings for his half-niece. And even if she didn't feel the same way, she seemed to care for him at least a little. But before we unravel more revelations about the seemingly shrewd dictator, let's take a pause and probe into the life of this caretaker who seems to know too much. Life before and after serving Hitler. Herbert Döring's story is one of those strange twists of fate, one where an ordinary man finds himself in the orbit of one of history's most notorious figures. Long before he became the caretaker of Hitler's Berghof, Döring was just another German trying to make his way in a country. He was just catching his breath, reeling from the aftermath of the First World War. His path to Hitler's inner circle was neither planned nor sought after. It was simply a matter of being in the right place at the right time, with the right skills. Born in the early 20th century, Herbert Döhring came from humble beginnings. Unlike many of Hitler's inner circle, he wasn't a die-hard Nazi ideologue or a high-ranking party official. Instead, he was a practical man with a background in hotel management. This was a profession that demanded discretion, organization, and an eye for detail. Before his employment at the Berghof, Döhring worked in the hospitality industry, where he gained experience managing estates and large households. His work involved coordinating staff, overseeing maintenance, and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. Those were the qualities that eventually caught the attention of Hitler's aides. In 1935, Döhring was approached with an unusual proposition. He was called upon to become the administrator of Hitler's newly acquired mountain home, the Berghof, in Oberaltsburg. The offer didn't come directly from Hitler, but through Nazi party channels. This was likely because Döhring's professional background made him an ideal candidate. Unlike other staff members who were chosen for their political loyalty, Döhring was hired for his competence. At the time, the Berghof was being expanded from a modest chalet into a heavily guarded fortress, complete with guest quarters, a grand hall, and extensive security measures. Döhring's role was to manage the estate's daily operations, supervising servants, handling supplies, and ensuring that Hitler's residence functioned like a well-oiled machine. While serving in Hitler's world, Döhring met his future wife, Anna Plain, who took on the role of cook. Anna worked directly in the kitchen, preparing meals for Hitler and his guests. Her position gave her an intimate view of the household's inner workings. This entailed what Hitler ate, who he visited, and how the staff interacted behind closed doors. She navigated the delicate task of cooking for a man known for his erratic eating habits. Hitler was a vegetarian with particular tastes, and his meals had to be prepared with extreme care. Though Döhring later revealed in an interview that the Führer had a taste for sweet things, as he would go to the kitchen at night when everyone was asleep to sneakily get some apple pie, like a child who stole meat. But still, he maintained his strict diet. The kitchen staff, including Anna, were under constant scrutiny. This was because any mistake could draw the Führer's ire. Döhring's job was demanding but not glamorous. He wasn't part of Hitler's inner circle. He didn't attend high-level meetings or engage in political discussions. Instead, he was the man who made sure the lights worked, the staff was paid, and the estate ran without disruption. The couple had no children, which may have made their employment at the Berghof easier. Living and working in such an environment required complete dedication. So without family obligations, they could devote themselves fully to their duties. Their marriage, however, provided them with a private support system in a rather suffocating atmosphere. But how did they cope? How were they able to keep their love afloat despite dedicating it fully to the service of a seemingly hostile dictator? For nearly a decade, the Döhrings lived and worked at the Berghof. They literally witnessed the transformation of Hitler from a political leader into a dictator, obsessed with secrecy and control. But despite the pressures, the Döhrings managed to maintain a degree of normalcy. They weren't ideological fanatics. They were employees doing a job. Döhring later described his time at the Berghof as a mix of routine and surrealism. One day, he'd be dealing with mundane repairs. The next, he'd see high-ranking Nazis like Goebbels or Himmler arriving for secret meetings. As the Second World War escalated, life at the Berghof changed. Security tightened, and Hitler's visits became less frequent as he spent more time in military headquarters. By 1943, the Döhrings' tenure at the estate came to an end. The reasons for their departure remain unclear, though. Some sources suggest they were reassigned, while others imply that the increasing paranoia of the Nazi regime made their positions untenable. Döhring was later drafted into military service. Anna, like many German women during the war, faced the hardships of a country under siege. Their time at the Berghof, however, had given them a front-row seat to the main happenings of politics. When the war ended in 1945, the Döhrings, like many Germans, had to navigate the chaos of a defeated nation. Döhring was briefly detained by Allied forces, but was released when it became clear he had not been involved in war crimes. Unlike many of Hitler's inner circle, who were executed or imprisoned, the Döhrings faded into obscurity. They never sought publicity or profit from their time at the Berghof. Döhring returned to a quiet life, working in various administrative roles in post-war Germany. Anna, too, lived out her years away from the spotlight. It wasn't until much later, when historians began piecing together the final days of the Third Reich, that Herbert Döhring's name resurfaced as one of the last living witnesses to Hitler's private life. Now let's dive into more revelations that the caretaker had shared with the rest of the world regarding the cobwebs in the cupboard of the world's most hated dictator. Hitler's daily life and social responsibility. More than just a retreat, the Berghof was a carefully curated space for Hitler. It was where the boundaries between his public persona and private life blurred. While history remembers him as the architect of systematic extermination, those who lived and worked alongside him at the Berghof saw a different side. They witnessed a man obsessed with routine, prone to small acts of generosity, and deeply invested in the minutiae of domestic life. Stories from Herbert During and other staff displayed a rather confusing side of him. He could be strict and hard to please, but also surprisingly kind to the people close to him. How in the world is that even possible, you may wonder? But sit back and watch as we take you through the inside life of Adolf Hitler as revealed by his manager. Hitler's journeys between Berlin and his mountain retreat at Oberaltsburg often included an unplanned detour that revealed an unexpected, more personal side of the dictator. His personal driver, Erich Kempka, would frequently make an unscheduled stop at Haus Wachenfeld, the modest residence at Oberaltsburg, before it was transformed to the Grand Berghof estate. These impromptu visits to the Döhring household offered a glimpse into Hitler's complex character. He would step out of the official Mercedes and enter the home as if making a casual social call, far removed from his usual, carefully staged public appearances. The Führer's arrival always created a flurry of activity, particularly for Anna Döhring, the household cook, who suddenly found herself preparing unexpected meals for the most powerful man in Germany. These visits placed Anna in a difficult position. As the official cook at the Berghof, she already had strict meal preparations to oversee for Hitler's scheduled lunches. The unannounced stops meant hastily arranging suitable food and drink, often with limited notice and resources. The pressure to immediately provide appropriate refreshments for the Führer and his entourage added significant stress to what should have been routine journeys. And despite his reputation for ruthlessness, Hitler displayed a surprising degree of paternalism toward his household staff. Döhring noted that Hitler saw himself as responsible for their well-being, often providing financial gifts beyond their regular wages. These bonuses were not tied to performance, but were given as tokens of appreciation, particularly during holidays or personal milestones. One of the most notable examples was Hitler's habit of gifting large sums of money to long-serving employees. Anna Döhring, as the household cook, received occasional cash bonuses, which she used to support her family. Similarly, junior staff members like his maids, gardeners, and chauffeurs were sometimes given envelopes containing substantial amounts. This was a gesture that fostered loyalty in an otherwise volatile regime. This generosity extended to material comforts as well. Hitler ensured that his staff had access to quality food, even during wartime rationing. The Berghof's kitchens were always well-stocked, and employees ate the same meals served to Hitler and his guests. Additionally, staff members were provided with comfortable living quarters on the estate. Yet, this benevolence was not without its contradictions. While Hitler could be kind to those in his immediate orbit, he showed no such concern for the millions suffering under his policies. His generosity was selective, reserved for those who served him personally, and never extended to the broader population. This duality, being warm to those close to him but cold toward the rest, showed how he kept his sense of right and wrong in separate boxes. The most striking aspect of Hitler's private behavior was its mundanity. Away from the rallies and speeches, he exhibited habits that seemed almost ordinary. He had a sweet tooth, favoring cakes and pastries despite his otherwise strict diet. He enjoyed listening to Wagner and other classical composers, often playing records late into the night. And, like many pet owners, he doted on his dogs, particularly Blondie, whom he allowed to sleep in his bedroom. And even though Hitler didn't smoke, which came as a surprise that the dictator of the Third Reich was not involved in such vices, he let other people smoke out on the terrace while they sat and talked. He only ate vegetarian food, which was first grown in small gardens nearby. Later, they even built a greenhouse to grow his meals all year round. Everything he ate was planned out to match his strict habits and beliefs. As humorous as this may seem, it complicates the historical portrait of Hitler. Though this reveal doesn't excuse his crimes, it does show how evil can live side by side with ordinary habits. The same man who planned the Holocaust also worried about where to put a chair. The leader who started a world war still paused to thank his cook for a good dinner. It then brings us face to face with a hard truth. Sometimes evil wears a subtle disguise that it can be mistaken for weakness rather than nature. But given how he treated the masses, Hitler's tyranny was quite loud that even his kind gestures couldn't silence it. And if you think this hits the hardest, you're yet to digest another shocker. The fortification of Oberaltsburg. When Hitler chose the Alpine village of Oberaltsburg as his private retreat, it began to undergo a dramatic transformation. And as the administrator of the Berghof, Herbert Döhring observed this transformation up close. The changes began in earnest after 1933 when Hitler became Chancellor. The initial modest house, Haus Wachenfeld, was expanded into the Grand Berghof estate, but this was just the start. The entire surrounding area was gradually converted into what the Nazis called the Führersperrgebiet. It was a restricted zone exclusively for Hitler and his inner circle. This transformation didn't happen overnight, but unfolded in stages, each phase making the area more isolated and more secure. Construction crews worked tirelessly to reshape the mountainside. New roads were carved into the landscape, allowing for better access while simultaneously making the area easier to defend. The old winding paths that villagers had used for generations were replaced with wide, smooth thoroughfares suitable for military vehicles. Workers toiled around the clock, with shifts running day and night to meet the demanding schedules set by Hitler's architects. The first major addition was the Vermacht Barracks, completed in 1937. This marked the beginning of the militarization of Obersalzberg. Soldiers became a constant presence on what had once been peaceful hiking trails. The barracks housed not just regular army personnel, but specialized units trained specifically for protecting high-value targets. Their presence changed the character of the area completely, turning a vacation spot into what essentially functioned as a military base. Between 1938 and 1939, workers erected the Reich Chancellery building. This wasn't the famous Berlin structure, but a smaller version designed to handle government business during Hitler's extended stays in the mountains. The building included offices, meeting rooms, and secure communication facilities that allowed Hitler to govern the Reich from his retreat. Its construction demonstrated how the Berghof was evolving from a private home into an alternative seat of power. Security became increasingly sophisticated as the years passed. Starting in 1936, SS Guard units began patrolling the perimeter. By 1938, these units had formal responsibility for protecting the entire Führer reservation. Their presence wasn't subtle. Armed men in black uniforms became as much a part of the landscape as the pine trees and mountain peaks. They established checkpoints on all access roads and maintained constant patrols through the woods surrounding the compound. The year 1939 saw the beginning of an ambitious underground project, the Führer Bunker. This massive construction project took 2 years to complete, with workers digging deep into the mountain rock to create a bomb-proof shelter. The bunker included living quarters, communication centers, and emergency power supplies. Its thick concrete walls could withstand direct hits from aerial bombs, reflecting the growing awareness that Germany might face air attacks as the war progressed. Security infrastructure expanded rapidly in the early war years. The first SS barracks were finished in 1940, with additional extensions added later to accommodate more personnel. These weren't temporary structures, but solid, well-built facilities designed for long-term use. The SS guards lived in relative comfort compared to soldiers on the front lines, with proper heating, good food, and regular rotations. In 1941, workers completed the Wachstube, a dedicated guardhouse for security police and SS units. This building became the nerve center for all protection activities in the area. From here, officers coordinated patrols, monitored communications, and kept detailed records of everyone entering or leaving the restricted zone. The Wachstube represented the final stage in the evolution of Obersalzberg's security. What had begun as informal protection was now a professional, systematic operation. The security measures extended beyond physical structures. The Nazis implemented strict identification systems for anyone moving through the area. Workers, staff, and even high-ranking officials needed special passes that were checked multiple times along the approach roads. The security apparatus kept meticulous records of comings and goings, with logs noting the exact times people entered and left the compound. But it will amuse you to know that in spite of all these, Hitler wasn't impressed. One of the most striking revelations from Döring's testimony was how oddly Hitler treated his own safety. Even though Obersalzberg was being turned into a heavily guarded stronghold, Hitler's daily habits still left him strangely open to danger. It was always something that confused his security team. Döring recalled that Hitler frequently dismissed specific protective measures, believing that if someone truly wanted to kill me, no security could stop them. This gloomy view of life showed in how he behaved before the war. He often took long walks alone on the mountain paths near the Berghof, sometimes without telling his bodyguards. He also spoke freely with local villagers and even tourists passing through, even though the SS didn't like it. The staff at the Berghof often saw Hitler ignore safety rules. He refused to remove the big glass windows in the house, even though they were easy targets in an attack. When someone suggested using bulletproof glass, he said it would spoil the beautiful mountain view. Even as more bunkers and military buildings were added around him, Hitler's personal lifestyle stayed oddly open and relaxed, especially when compared to other world leaders at the time. This strange mix of tight security and personal carelessness was most obvious during meals. The outside of the Berghof was guarded like a fortress, but Hitler still took food and drinks from different staff members without the kind of safety checks used in most government homes. Anna Döhring, the cook, could hand his meals directly to him, something that would have shocked his security team if Hitler hadn't told them to stay out of it. Historians have different ideas about why he acted this way. Some think it's because Hitler believed nothing could harm him. After all, many close to him noticed. Others say he wanted to look like a simple man who didn't see himself above the people, especially when he first came to power. According to Döhring, Hitler kept this easygoing attitude even after the war started. It only changed after someone tried to kill him in 1944. In the end, Hitler's security had two very different sides. On the outside, there were strong walls, bunkers, and guards to show off Nazi power. But on the inside, His personal safety was oddly loose, showing how he thought differently from most leaders. This strange contrast between the tough image and the relaxed reality was something Döhring saw every day while working at the Berghof. But the transformation at Oberaltsburg had profoundly affected surrounding villages. Many local families were forced to sell their properties to make way for the expanding complex. Those who remained found their lives completely transformed. Simple mountain farmers suddenly had to navigate a maze of checkpoints and security procedures just to tend their fields. The traditional way of life in Oberaltsburg disappeared, replaced by the constant hum of generators, the rumble of military vehicles, and the ever-present armed guards. Döhring's position gave him a unique perspective on these changes. As administrator, he had to coordinate between construction teams, security personnel, and household staff. His revelation explains how everyday life continued amidst the growing militarization. Staff still had to prepare meals, maintain the grounds, and keep the household running smoothly. Even as concrete walls rose around them and armed patrols marched past the windows. By 1943, the compound reached its final form. It became the self-contained world with everything Hitler and his inner circle needed to live and work in complete isolation. It had housing, offices, entertainment facilities, and enough supplies to withstand extended periods of seclusion. The security was so thorough that even as Germany began losing the war, Oberaltsburg remained impenetrable, at least until the Allied bombing raids began targeting it directly. By April 1945, the monster who had terrorized Europe was reduced to a trembling wreck in a concrete tomb. As Soviet artillery shook Berlin's ruins, Adolf Hitler, the man who demanded self-harming last stands from his soldiers, prepared his own escape from justice. In his claustrophobic Führer bunker, surrounded by gasoline cans and cyanide capsules, history's greatest villain was scripting his final scene. But this time, not as a warrior, but as a coward. The last 42 hours revealed the true Hitler. He tested cyanide on his beloved dog Blondie. In a macabre midnight wedding, he married Eva Braun, while Germany burned above them. Then, as Red Army troops fought through the Reich Chancellery's rubble, Hitler took his own life in an underground bunker. His wife followed suit after using a poison. All these happened as young boys were being sent out to fight for him in the already crumbling streets. He refused to face the consequences of his crimes. No Nuremberg trial, no reckoning, just a bullet and a coward's exit, leaving his people to suffer the peace he couldn't endure. After the cowardly exit, their bodies were gotten rid of, in a bomb carter, without any form of grand farewell. But Hitler's gone now. After discovering the inside life of this villain, which shocking truth was the most disturbing? We'll love to hear from you in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more discovery. We'll see you in the next video.